So when you look at the Vikings back in 2022, they were under a new regime after former head coach Mike Zimmer was fired, and they were bringing in a first-year head coach and a first-time head coach in Kevin O'Connell, who had previously served as Sean McVay's offensive coordinator back in Los Angeles as the Rams. And he was also coming off a Super Bowl 56 victory. So you'd think he would be bringing his experience into Minnesota to help out Kirk Cousins, finally reignite a little bit of something that Mike Zimmer didn't have. So that being said, going into the actual season itself, it was actually a pretty successful first season for the Minnesota Vikings. The offense looked a little bit reignited with Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, and others. And they were doing pretty well for themselves, leading the team to victories and eventually clinching the NFC North and having a crazy 33-0 comeback that clinched that division against the Indianapolis Colts. However, I guess in that 33-0 comeback, that was a symbolism of why they had that success in the first place. It had to do with a lot of extreme luck, the luck of the comeback. And the reason for the luck of the comeback was because their defense was god awful, probably the worst, one of the worst in the NFL that year. And their luck finally ran out when playoff time came, and the comeback magic when they were down against the New York Giants, mind you, in the first round matchup against them. So their luck finally ran out against the Giants in that wild card game, and yeah, one of the most fraudulent teams ever to be in the NFL. So yeah, 13-4, won the division, but it was required by a lot of luck. So if you're the Minnesota Vikings, considering that what transpired this offseason, sure, you want to make it deeper into the playoffs with Kirk Cousins. But considering where you are now and considering the circumstances, you probably think to yourself, I wonder if that's really possible. So when I looked at this team after the 2022 season ended, some of my team needs for them included was addressing that defense, specifically linebacker and corner, because the secondary was pretty bad. It was like they were just getting roasted frequently, and even like the bottom tier receivers were just able to speed through them at will. And in the middle of the field, like the linebackers couldn't cover them. Like the inside linebackers just were not able to find their assignment. It was like that bad with that defense. Ed Donatel was just that terrible calling plays. And then you had to find a second receiving option opposite Justin Jefferson. Sure, you had KJ Osborne there, but you needed to find that other option because Adam Thielen was not getting that younger. So, and he was also like not being targeted as much. So those are my two biggest needs for the Minnesota Vikings this past offseason. Now, when you look at the surrounding events in that offseason, they did fire defensive coordinator Ed Donatel, and rightfully so, because he coached up a terrible defense, one of the worst defenses in the NFL that year. And they made an interesting hire in former Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores. He certainly coached up a solid defense when he was the coach of the Miami Dolphins, and then obviously his tenure during the New England Patriots. So maybe he gives them a boost with the Vikings. It depends on the personnel, though, with that group, but we'll give it a shot. They also made some interesting releases during the offseason. They released linebacker Zadarius Smith, who was only there for like a year, but maybe he was like due to frustration, I guess. They also released receiver Adam Thielen, and then perhaps the most interesting one of all, Dalvin Cook. So I'm not sure why they released Dalvin Cook, but maybe it was like his contract, injuries. I don't know. But either way, I think releasing Dalvin Cook was kind of a choice. I don't know why. But looking at some of their re-signings, all their key offseason moves, they re-signed a backup now turned starting running back, Alexander Mattison. Maybe that's why they released Dalvin Cook. They saw more potential in Alexander Mattison. They also re-signed center Garrett Bradbury, so a key piece of that offensive line, but certainly they need more help than that. They did lose a couple of big pieces, one of them being defensive tackle Dalvin Thompson to the Cleveland Browns. A big piece in that interior defensive line is gone. So for as bad as that pass rush was in 2022, losing a big piece like that is not there anymore. Patrick Peterson's not there anymore. Also, he went to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he is on the older side, so not that big of a loss. Eric Kendricks went to the LA Chargers, so another part of that secondary. He was a solid piece for the Vikings, but he's not there. But looking at some of their additions, you got corner Byron Murphy from the Arizona Cardinals. So they did get younger, so I'll admit that. He was a big help for the Cardinals defense when they were sucking. Defensive end Marcus Davenport from the New Orleans Saints. So Davenport, he was 50-50 with that Saints pass rush, but I think with Brian Flores there now, I think Flores can do something with Davenport. Backup tight end Josh Oliver from the Baltimore Ravens. That was a little bit of an interesting move, considering they already have TJ Hawkinson, but maybe he can be used as a blocking tight end, as a backup lineman, maybe. And then in the draft, they at least did a good move here in the draft. They got a receiver by the name of Jordan Addison from USC, so they at least have their three starting receivers in Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, and now Jordan Addison. So, hey, I can't really complain there. Corner Mekhi Blackman from USC also looks like a solid corner. And let's see how he pans out in training camp and in preseason. Safety Jay Ward from LSU. And then a quarterback by the name of Jaron Hall from BYU. So, I mean, they got themselves a quarterback. I don't know if he can be a starting quarterback, but let's see how he plays in preseason. So when you look at this Vikings team and what they did in the offseason, it seems like they're gearing towards a soft rebuild of sorts because, they released perhaps their top running back in Dalvin Cook, and they still have a little bit of aging players left. But, they stocked up on a few potential young players that have potential that can be part of the starting rotation. But then again, it's not a lot of quality left on this team. But the defense on paper, I'll say, at least looks a little better slightly than last year. Again, it's just a matter of how Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator, coaches them up, how the players will react accordingly, how will they play on the field. It's going to be a matter of that. So looking at some of your key potential games going into 2023, it's a pretty brutal slate, to be honest with you, if you're the Minnesota Vikings. You go to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles again in week 2. It's the second year in a row that they have to go to Philadelphia to play them in week 2 on Thursday night this time on Prime Video behind that paywall. And then week 3, you return home to play the LA Chargers against Justin Herbert. Rough. And then a brutal 3-week stretch in weeks 5 to 7. You play Patrick Mahomes and the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs at home. And then you play Justin Fields and the Bears on the road in week 6. And who knows what the Bears will be like. Maybe they're good. Maybe they're bad. They're in the middle of the pack. But the Bears always somehow find a way to challenge the Vikings. Even when they're at their worst. Except for that last game where they were just trying to lose back in 2022. And then you play the 49ers on Monday night in week 7. And, well, Kirk Cousins not the brightest under the bright lights. So even then, you don't know if it's going to be Brock Purdy or if it's going to be Trey Lance starting for the 49ers. But you never want to doubt the 49ers, especially with how good their defense is. And their offense as well, whoever's going to be the quarterback. So some of my biggest questions for the Vikings this season is, well, the offensive line. It was pretty bad in 2022. Kirk Cousins got hit a lot, even though he didn't get sacked too much. Who's going to step up to help center Garrett Bradbury and Christian Darrisaw on the offensive line? Especially considering they lost Christian Darrisaw for a good chunk of the season last year. And that offensive line, once he was gone, really fell apart. So yeah, who's going to be that man to step up to help them out? They still have questions on like a couple of key spots, like the guard spots. And does Christian Darrisaw play left or right tackle? I'm not sure. But either way, that offensive line really has to do better in 2023. So somebody has to step up to give Kirk Cousins better protection. Speaking of Kirk Cousins, I believe it's a contract year, I think, because in 2024, teams can vie for him if any team wants to. So Kirk Cousins, really, if he wants to get some more money for his next contract, for whichever team he wants to play for, then he really needs to perform very well. Otherwise, well, he could be just staring at a backup role. So for the Vikings, they did add some nice players in the draft. They got some decent pieces in free agency, but I still have a lot of questions because they still have several aging players, tons of question marks, and you got a couple of like younger players with potential, but how do they translate that onto the field? So Minnesota, they may have lucked into winning the NFC North in 2022, but I don't think that'll be the case in 2023, especially considering how vastly improved the Lions are, and the Bears could potentially be. And even though Jordan Love is starting for the Green Bay Packers, you can never count out Green Bay out. So I think Minnesota Vikings will take a regression, but not as bad of a regression as they will take. Maybe 9-8. They won't make the playoffs. Maybe they will somehow luck in. But either way, they'll take a regression considering the roster turnaround that they suffered through this offseason.